This woman, Maria Aponte, she is a friend of mine. I knew her husband. He was the first storyteller I ever met. And I had known many of his girlfriends. And
She actually told his story at the wedding.
I know many of his girlfriends.
She did.
And I wasn't particularly fond of them.
In the Bronx, you don't do that. It's okay.
I'm a Jew from Brooklyn. What can I say? So anyway, there's Bobby, and I love Bobby, and I want him to have the best. And lo and behold, he found the best. Now, Maria is a poet. She was one of the Puerto Rican poets, right? Back then, in the old days, she's one of the old street poets and Puerto Rican poets from back in the day on the Lower East Side, and she has become a playwright and a storyteller, and she has books, and believe you have some books for sale.
You told me to bring.
I told him to. It's called Confessions of a Nuyorican Cinderella.
Transitions of a
I knew it was close. Transitions of a Nuyorican Cinderella. It's really beautiful. And I probably said, did I say the title wrong?
That's okay.
I do it I always do it. It doesn't matter what comes out of my mouth. What comes, you want to look and see what's on the page. But Maria, I knew that Maria would be the perfect person for this story because she has a long history of visitations within her family. So I'm just going to leave it right there and give you the amazing Maria Aponte.
You're funny. Okay, so when Robin had invited me to do the ghost stories back in the summer, at first I was like, and then I had a vision of the Wizard of Oz, and I saw the cowardly lion in the forest, and he's going, I do believe in ghosts, I do. And yes, I do, because I see ghosts. They have been with me since I was born. I come from a long, long history of spiritualists. In Spanish, they call it espiritistas. I was born and raised in East Harlem. And I remember my mom would leave me with this lady named Paula who lived on 111th Street and Madison Avenue. Now, when I say I grew up in East Harlem, I grew up in East Harlem very, very poor. I grew up in a walk-up building with holes this big in the hallways, junkies in the front of the building. Homeless people were called bums, and they used to like to work to get a quarter. So if Leroy was on the corner and someone was coming with their bags, they gave Leroy a quarter so he could get his wild Irish Rose, and he would take your bags upstairs. And even though he was a bum, he always called my mom Miss Rose. I lived in a very segregated part of New York. I did not leave 116th Street. You didn't go to the Upper East Side because they didn't want you there. Plain and simple. That's the way it was. So if you went to the Upper East Side, I suffered on the bus with my mother because growing up in New York, you have all different kind of cultures. So here was this Afro-Puerto Rican mother that just loved good German pastries. And so I knew what it was to go to 3rd Avenue with my mom, and we would buy these pastries and get back up on the bus, and we'd sit like this because you didn't look at people. You look like this, and then you breathe once the bus passed 96th Street. Because then you said, ahora estoy en mi pueblo. Now I'm home. And I think I could speak for anyone that's lived in different generations, like you did not go in that block. So, my ghost stories. So my mom used to leave me with Paula on 111th Street in Madison because she was still working, and she picked me up after work. I was about 7 years old, and we would walk. So if anybody really knows El Barrio, East Harlem, you know that we have long blocks in Manhattan. So to save money, we would walk from 111th Street and Madison Avenue all the way back to 117th Street and 2nd, because that's where we lived. And on Park Avenue, there was what's called La Marqueta. It was the marketplace, and it ran from 116th Street. Oh, hi, I knew you were going to come out because you like me. I know.
Just checking it out.
Come here, boo-boo. Yeah, she's like, yeah, okay. When the animals like you, you're cool. When they run away from you, you better go. Get some holy water and bless yourself. So we're walking on the Park Avenue, and it's completely dark. This was before all these lovely life-saving light bulbs. It was the New York of the 60-watt bulb in the glass case thing. And so we're walking, and I'm walking with my mom, and when you're a kid, all you see is shadows in the dark, and you know, and if you have a vivid imagination, you start thinking there's things there that are not there. So I'm walking with my mom. She's tired, and we're walking, and I just heard feet that were not ours. And we would walk, and the feet would, and we'd walk, and so I started going like this. And my mother, very practical Virgo that she was, she didn't say anything. She let it go the first couple of times, and then she turns around and she goes, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "There's somebody following us." And my mother grew up in a barrio, so she knew how to street fight. So she stopped and she went, "Who's there?" Nobody was there. We keep walking. So we got to La Marqueta, and this was going on for a few blocks, and it was bad because every time I turned around, I kept seeing this shadow. And so we keep walking, and all of a sudden the market's there, and at night the lights were on in the market, and now there's nothing left of the market. It's just one building on 116th Street, which was one of the original houseware buildings. And so the lights are on, and my mother was a storyteller of sorts. And so I'm looking through the windows, because they were real high windows, and I'm seeing these shadows, because I was just on shadow mode. And I'm looking, and I swore that I saw things moving. And that was the first time I was being told the plátano story. Plantains. Plátanos in Spanish. So I'm like, "Ma." She goes, "What?" I said, "I see something moving inside La Marqueta." She goes, "There's nothing inside La Marqueta. It's closed. It'll open up in the morning." And I said, "No, Mommy, something's moving." She goes, "What do you see?" And I said, "Look, you see, like they look like little people." And so she looks up. She goes, "Did I ever tell you about the plátanos?" I said, "The what?" She goes, "The plátanos." So this is what happened. The vegetables, and I bought it. The vegetables, when everything is closed, because they're so tired of being around real people that after they leave, that's when they turn on all the music from the Palladium, and that's when they dance the mambo. And she's telling me these stories, and I'm going for it. And one day I'll tell the cabbage story, and I said, "Where babies come from?" And she's making cabbage and she goes, "Oh, didn't I tell you about the little man that lives inside the cabbage head? Look, if you look right here, there's a door, and he just gives you the babies." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So we get home. That's the beginning of this. And still the feet. So I was trying to distract myself. So we get to the house, and I happen to have grown up in a haunted apartment where nobody believed the things I would see. And so it was a requirement that before I went to bed, I had to wash my socks and the panties and wring them out and hang them up, and then wash your face, brush your teeth before you go to bed. And the first time this happened to me, I was like, nah. I'm washing my face, and I saw this old white man standing behind me with black suspenders, and he was just standing there. And I stopped washing my face. I got soap in my eye, and he wasn't there. I go in the room. I get under the covers. My heart's going. And my mother's like, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "There's a man in the living room." She goes, "Marie, you got to stop this. There's nobody there." This kept on for a while. I would see this man, and he just would not go away. As a matter of fact, he followed me for the next 20 years of my life. Because it wasn't until I was starting to tell my grandmother what was going on, that she started explaining to me how sometimes spirits get attached to you and they follow you. And so, except you don't mess with my grandmother. And so I'm washing my face and I would still see this man. I go upstairs to my aunt's house because back then Puerto Ricans used to share 3 apartments in one building. I go to my aunt, my great grandaunt. I go up to her house and I'm telling her the story and she's not paying attention to me. And she goes, no, pero stay with me. You know, Rosie, she's going to stay with me. And I go up there to sleep there and I fall asleep. And this lady calls me into the kitchen. And I thought it was my aunt. I go to the kitchen and there I see this white lady with a bun, her hair back in a bun, and she's wearing a black dress that looked like something out of the 1900s with a collar. And she's telling me, why don't you come over here? And I walk over to her and she proceeds to put her hands around my neck and start strangling me. And I'm screaming, except when I wake up, I'm in my bed and my throat hurts. All this went on for the longest time till I went to mommy's house. My grandmother, I called her mommy. And my grandmother was a real, consultant, consulta, and she used to read. And people used to be waiting in the living room and go down the stairs to see her on Saturdays because she didn't work Sundays. And I'm sitting there having my little piece of pound cake, and I tell her what happened, and she goes, so she's cutting the cake, she goes, ¿Qué? And I start telling her the stories. So my grandmother goes and calls my mother up. Rosie, I'm translating all of this in English. She goes, Rosie, do you know your daughter's psychic? Doña Carmen, you crazy. Click. Ring. Rosa Maria, don't hang up the phone. Maria can see people. I need to keep her for the weekend. And my mother was like, no, Virgo.
Yeah.
I didn't pack a bag of clothes for her to stay in your house for the weekend, so she has to come home. Nope, she has to stay for the weekend. I'll buy her something. And so my grandmother started helping me to stop seeing dead people. And I only would see them if I needed them. And if I saw them, they were my warriors. Fast forward, I lived in an old house in Webster Avenue, not far from where our apartment is now, and I had gotten robbed. Guy climbed in through the window, took my stuff, went out the window, and I freaked. This was long after my grandmother died, but my grandmother taught me how to do spirit work to take care of myself. And so I went to my aunt, my mother's sister, I told her what happened, and she said, okay, we're gonna have to send the Indians. I said, the who? She goes, you do know that in our family we have African warriors and we have Indians. And I said, okay. And I said, you know, there used to be this man that followed me around when I was a little girl. And he was to walk like this and he would stop. And he was tall. I knew he was tall. And I'm telling you this story, my hairs are standing up. And he was tall. And she goes, yeah, that's either your Lukumi tribe or one of your Indians, Native American. And so she says, don't worry about it. Go home. You'll be fine. I go home because I didn't want to sleep in my apartment. I had windows just like this. This is so ironic. The windows were just like this. I go to bed. For some reason, I had to go pee. I get up and I see 3 shadows on the window. And I looked real quick and I said, okay, here we go again. And I looked at them and I had 3 Native American warriors. One stood like this, the other one had a staff like this, and the other one had a hatchet. And I said, I just need to go to the bathroom. And I'm going back to bed. And something tells me you're not going to be there when the sun comes up. But if you want to come back after midnight tomorrow and someone else can see you, go right ahead. And so I don't know if I went my whole half hour there, but I have always seen them, and they're always with me. They walk with me. Our home is always full of people. People come and visit us, and they're like, the house is full. We're like, yeah, they're here. And so one thing that did happen to me that's not a happy story, but I have to tell this story, was it has to do with 9/11. My cousin and her husband lived in London, and in 2000, from 99 to 2002. And I got invited to go to London, and part of the trip was we went to France. And we went to the D-Day beaches. So I went, and she's psychic like me, and so she has the baby, and they have brand new parking lot, but past the parking lot, it's all the original land, because the French did not want any of that property touched. So she gets out the car, she goes, I'm gonna stay with Ian inside the car, you guys go. Boom, closes the door. And I went, and I got ice cold, and wind was blowing, and I walked over to where they had the barbed wire, where the rain, because the barbed wire is still there from the Rangers that tried to climb up the cliff. And I stood there and I touched it, and I'm looking out to the English Channel, and you could see the holes in the ground from the bombing. And I stood there, and for some reason, somebody goes, Miss, could you tell them to give us some light? All we wanted was some light. Hey, lady, could you take this letter to my mom? Hey, miss, you know what? And I started hearing all these languages of young men. And I knew that I was hearing soldiers. And so I started hysterically crying. But for some reason that day I had my rosary with me in my pocket. And I took it out and I just started praying. And they told me all they wanted was a chapel on the beach, not where they put it. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. And I got hysterical crying, and I looked out in the water and I said, God, I hope I never see this in my lifetime. And someone stood next to me and said, I'm so sorry, but you will. I came home that May, and I just was feeling like I knew something was wrong. And I started dreaming with planes. When 9/11 happened, my neighborhood took a big hit like everybody else, and people were putting candles in front of the buildings, and I was all sobbing, and I'm praying, and I'm in the kitchen, and I'm all upset. And then I had a poltergeist moment. I had a clock on my wall. Damn thing flew off the wall like somebody took it and threw it. And my grandmother came out, and I said, oh, hell no, not here. I went in the room, I got the incense, I got the holy water, I took out some candles, I blessed the house, I prayed, and I said, you know what? All I can do is pray for you forever. And that's my ghost stories for Halloween. On the bed and smoking because he likes to wear a straw hat. Don't call me.
How did you know that? You know,
Con los santos no se juega. Never mind, I'll translate it.
yeah, translate for me later.
I want you to go to sleep tonight.
You know, I don't know. I've had a ghost who sort of stayed with me. My mother came to visit and had a hard time leaving. I know that, and it's funny, every time I listen to any ghost story, I hear another one, or I think of another one, something someone has told me, or something someone wants to tell me, or something I'm going to hear in a little while.